Minecraft just released a brand new snapshot, 24W33A. For being a snapshot for a non-major version, this is actually a pretty big update with quite a few changes. The biggest of the bunch would be, after all these years, the introduction of the bundle. By the way, I just want to say thank you, Mojang, for announcing the bundles were coming literally 3 hours before my video complaining about them. In addition to those, though, there are a lot of smaller changes too. Get it? They've added baby variants of the squid, glow squid, and dolphin, along with different sizes for salmon. But among all these changes, one seems to have people talking the most. They changed the redstone torch. Okay, but in all seriousness, the change I wanted to focus on for this video are all the changes to the minecart. Not only does it properly jump off ramps now where it would have just plummeted in previous versions, but they also added a brand new game rule that allows you to increase the minecart's top speed from 8 all the way up to 1000. And it's safe to say people are having a lot of fun with this. Now, all of these changes were done in a response to a pretty common criticism Minecraft has been receiving as of late, the fact that traveling in the world is broken. These minecart changes were implemented in order to address the concern that minecarts have become useless. However, while I am really enjoying these changes, I want to look back at that original problem, because to be honest, I'm not really sure if I agree that there even is a travel problem. So today, I'm going to give my opinion on the whole travel debate to see if Minecraft actually has an issue, or if I think people are complaining for nothing. So with that being said, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let's jump right in. Okay, so first things first, what are people's issues with the way travel currently works in the game? From what I can tell, it all comes down to a problem of balancing. People seem to believe that certain options are so much better than the others that they make the others completely obsolete. Travel is also a very important concern since that's obviously an essential part in both exploring the world and moving between different builds. That is the centerpiece for this entire Minecraft travel debate. However, for this video, I want to provide two sort of counter arguments for this even being a problem. The first of which is the fact that I simply don't think the main methods of travel have been made obsolete by the existence of the others. I say main travel methods because yes, riding a pig is pretty useless. But what are the main travel methods? Well, there's no definitive list, but I've come up with 5 transportation types that people often bring up in this discussion. That would be sprinting, horses, boats, minecarts, and the elytra, which I know you all are dying for me to talk about, but wait just like 5 minutes. So for my counter argument to the claim that Minecraft is a transportation problem, I want to take a look at all 5 of these and show why I think each still has their place in the game and what some of the pros and cons to each of them are. So first off, we got the baseline, sprinting. I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't include this in a travel discussion, but I feel like it has to be here since this is how a majority of players will be traveling. Of all the travel options, this is the pro of being the most accessible, as all it requires you to do is press the sprint button while walking. Whoa! If you ever want to move, basically at all, this is the go-to method. I feel like I don't really have to explain to you all that having an option to move without requiring extra resources is basically a requirement for playing the game. Compared to our other travel methods though, this has some downsides. I mean, obviously, because then there would be no reason to use the others literally ever. The main downside would be the speed. Unfortunately, Minecraft Steve is not Sonic the Hedgehog, so oh, I don't like that I said Sonic and not Mario in this video, that feels wrong. Anyway, point is, Steve does not run that fast, making sprinting the slowest method of transport among the 5 I've chosen to talk about. According to my excellent research on google.com, Steve can sprint about 5.6 blocks per second. However, if you jump while sprinting, you can actually bring that up to 7.1 blocks per second. You can also do other things like have a speed potion or whatever's going on here, but for the most part, 7.1 blocks per second is what you'll be getting off your sprint, since again, its main positive is the fact that it doesn't require resources or a setup. But what if I told you I lied? See, in order to sprint, you actually do need to account for your hunger bar, as if you hit 3 meat chunks, you'll lose the ability to sprint and will be forced to walk. Sprinting and jumping also makes you lose hunger as you do it, so if sprinting is your main method of travel, food will be crucial. Luckily, you don't lose too much hunger if you don't take damage, but it's still a very important con. So now that we've got our baseline discussed, why don't we move on to what's probably the most similar of the bunch, horses. Now there are a lot of different mobs you can ride, but horses are the main ones that matter. Sorry, llama fans. So how do these guys address the 2 cons of sprinting? Well, horses have the potential to be much faster. I mean, sometimes you get a super slow horse, but hey, that's what swords are for. At max speed, horses can move at 14.23 blocks per second, double Steve's sprinting speed. And just like sprinting around, you can run with a horse pretty much anywhere you'd like without any sort of setup. Additionally, you don't need to worry about hunger at all on a horse because it can still sprint no matter what your hunger's at, and it won't drain your hunger at all while you're riding. So already, we can see some pretty good reason to use the horse over sprinting, but the horse too has cons of its own. First is the fact that you need to find a horse and a saddle. Now these aren't hard to find, horses can spawn in most overworld biomes and saddles are found in a lot of chests throughout the world, but having to find anything is a con compared to sprinting. The horse can also have a bit of trouble in certain situations, like trying to get a horse to go across a small body of water should be considered a form of torture. On top of that, since the horse is, well,
you know, he's kinda, fat.
He can have a hard time fitting through tight spaces that the player could do just fine. And the final con is just the fact that the horse can Yeah, so you have to keep this guy alive and make sure it doesn't run off by either putting it in a hole or tying it to a fence. So compared to sprinting, this is faster, but less accessible, and has slightly less freedom. That gives good reason to use both, so I'd say the travel system is working pretty well so far. To address one of the big cons of the horse we mentioned before, we have the boat for water travel. Obviously, the main con for boats is the fact that it's only really useful for moving in water. At least that's what they want you to think. But let's just stick to its primary water use for now, and in water, it can move at about 8 blocks per second, a little faster than Steve's sprinting speed. That makes this great for water-based travel, and it also doesn't drain hunger just like the horse. Of course, you do have to craft a boat, but seeing as it's only 5 wooden planks, that shouldn't be an issue. Unless you spawn on a mushroom island. The main thing holding boats back is of course the fact that it's very confined to water. You can ride it on land, but it's not fast. Unless you do it on ice. This here is a secret travel method, but a very powerful one. If you put a boat on top of blue ice, it can reach speeds of 72.73 blocks per second, far faster than anything we've seen so far. In fact, it's the fastest method we'll be seeing today, excluding the minecart launcher. Due to how fast this is, that has put the boat in a bit of hot water. Some people say that this is too fast and that it's one of the travel methods that devalue the others. However, I completely disagree. Yes, it is by far the fastest, but it's also the most tedious to set up. Collecting all the blue ice required to make a large path with it can take a long time, especially since you need to get good enchantments like Soul Touch in order to do that. Once you do make that path, the boat only gets the speed while on top of it, meaning this has far less freedom than sprinting or horses. You also can't move upward very easily in a boat. You could set up a piston contraption, but for the most part, you are forced to stay flat while using this item. So yes, blue ice boats do allow for some insane speeds, but it is in no way a problem because it requires a ton of setup. I can't see any justification for wanting to nerf this whatsoever, because there is no problem with how it works right now. But this is when some people would bring up what inspired this video in the first place, the minecart. Blue ice roads could be seen as a boat's version of rails, so would there be any reason to use a minecart then? Well, let's go over its attributes first. The minecart is able to move at a max speed of 8 blocks per second, again ignoring the snapshot. This time though, it has the pretty strict limitation of only moving while on rails. Rails and minecarts can be kind of expensive as they require iron and gold to use properly. Now those are two of the most common farm types in the game, but why even bother with all that setup if a horse is faster without anything? Well, the minecart does have the pretty helpful advantage of not requiring any input from the player to work. If you have a really long distance you want to travel, then you could just sit in a minecart and AFK until you reach your destination, which is not something you can do with the other travel methods. On top of that, minecarts are actually able to move upward unlike boats, so they're a better choice when it comes to any sort of vertical movement. Minecarts are also smaller than a horse, so if you want to go through a tunnel of some kind, you won't have to dig out as much. The big advantage of minecarts over horses though is the fact that you can kidnap mobs. I'm sure every Smash player has at least one minecart horror story. This also goes for boats as well, making both of these items essential in mob transportation, which is something I don't see brought up much, but I think it's very important when considering these items' usefulness. So yes, the minecart does have a lot of flaws like setup time and a relatively slow speed, but it's still got a lot of reasons to use it. But again, I am very happy they seem to be updating the minecart to make the speed a little bit faster. But with all that being said, it's time we finally talk about the elephant in the room, the transportation method that has received by far the most complaints of the bunch, the elytra. When wearing these, you're able to fly pretty much anywhere. It's a bit hard to calculate an exact speed, but around 67 blocks per second is what I've seen from my research. That is extremely fast and only just barely under blue ice boats. However, this isn't confined to a track, as you can fly at this speed anywhere you want to. So if this is so fast and so flexible to use, it's got to make the others completely obsolete, right? No. This has plenty of downsides to it as well. For one, you can only get this item from end ships. Not only do those just have a 25% chance to spawn per end city, but to even find an end city, you need to beat the entire game. Now yes, some people could do that in like 10 minutes, but most people will not. A lot of people don't like to bother with the end or even the nether because it's too hard for them, so that leads to the other transportation methods being extremely useful instead. On top of that, the elytra requires some decent effort to maintain. Oh, yep, there it goes. The elytra runs on durability, which means every so often you'll have to repair it. To properly use the elytra, you also need fireworks, which cost paper and gunpowder. That means you'll need to set up a farm for both of those items, which can take a good amount of effort to do. And on top of all this, the elytra isn't even the fastest thing here. Like I said, blue ice boats are, so late game travel becomes a trade-off between speed and freedom, which I think is a perfect dynamic. Now with all those pros and cons laid out for each item, I think it's safe to say that each of these have their own niche. Sprinting is the easiest and most accessible. Horses provide a good upgrade to sprinting early game. Boats are great for water travel and have the potential for the fastest speed of the bunch. Minecarts are good for AFK travel and transporting mobs. And finally, the elytra has the most flexibility and is very fast, but requires you to beat the game and do some occasional maintenance. I think it's safe to say that there is a time and place to use all of these, but this is when people will bring up that, despite each having their own uses, it's clear that the elytra is still by far the best one. I mean, the high freedom and speed is pretty great for the small amount of maintenance you have to do. And to that, I completely agree, it's obviously still the best. But why is that a problem? Time and time again, I hear people say that the elytra is overpowered and needs to be nerfed, but I've never heard a good reason for that. The elytra is is an endgame item, so it should be good to make it feel like a worthwhile reward. To me, this is like complaining that the pickaxes aren't balanced because netherite is so much better than wood. Yeah, that's the point, they're not supposed to be equal. It's okay for something to be overall better than something else, and I don't understand why people see the elytra being good as a problem. I also just find it really fun to use, and I think most people do as well, so I feel like a nerf to it would just be a frustrating fix to a problem that wasn't a problem in the first place. Sure, less people are using minecarts than they were in beta now, but realistically, who cares? Minecarts still have a use for AFK and mob transportation, and I don't think there's any need for it to directly compete with the elytra. Same goes for everything we've talked about, they all have the reasons to use them, even if it's just the fact that it doesn't require you to beat the game. So to conclude, no, I don't think Minecraft actually has a transportation problem. That said, I'm absolutely not opposed to the new additions that the minecart is getting because they are really fun. I'm more so scared at the other side of the coin that Mojang will decide to try and nerf the elytra or blue ice boats in response to the community asking for it, which I just think would be a bad idea. If they want to add more fun things to the horse, for example, I'm all for it, but I really do not want to see any nerfs. I just think if they did that, it would make two things less fun, and for what? To make people use horses more? They're already good at their job of being an early game travel companion, and for those who don't want to risk entering the end. I'm really not sure what the response for this video will be, because I feel like most people think the elytra is overpowered. Guess you could consider this my Minecraft hot takes video early. But despite how controversial this may be, I've been wanting to express my personal thoughts on this for a while. But anyways, that's it for this video. Is the Strider your favorite form of travel and hate me for not mentioning it? Let me know in the comments. While you're down there, I do really want to hear what you guys have to say about this and if you think transportation has an actual issue in the game or not. But I've got to get back to editing the 200k special, so dry bones for Smash, and I'll see you guys next time.